If you've ever held a blank CD, you've probably held a really fascinating puzzle without even realizing it. It's a 146 megabyte mystery, and it's been hiding in plain sight on millions and millions of these shiny disks for decades. See, you look at the label, and it lists two numbers, 80 minutes of audio and 700 megabytes of data. You'd think those are just two different ways of saying the same thing, right? Well, here's the thing. They're not. Not even close. Okay, let's just do the math for a second. Standard CD audio, that's stereo, 16-bit at 44,100 samples a second. That works out to exactly 176,400 bytes of data for every single second of music. So you multiply that by 60 seconds to get a minute, and then by 80 minutes for the whole disc, and you get this number. A whopping 846,720,000 bytes. That is not 700 million. It's almost 847 million. So the real question is, what in the world happened to over 146 megabytes of space when you switch from burning an audio CD to a data CD? Where did it go? Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. It's the classic megabyte versus mebibyte mix-up, where one is based on powers of 10 and the other on powers of 2. And that's a great thought. But even when you run the numbers on that, it still doesn't add up. No, the real answer is, well, it's a lot more clever. So here's the big reveal. That space wasn't lost. It wasn't missing at all. It was actually sacrificed on purpose for something way more important when you're dealing with computer files: absolute, total perfection. Think about it this way. With music, if your CD has a tiny scratch or an error, the player can make a pretty good guess at what was supposed to be there. It just interpolates. And you, the listener, you're never going to notice a tiny fraction of a second of sound that was basically fudged into existence. But data? Oh no. You can't guess a single bit in a piece of software or a document. One wrong bit and the whole file can be completely corrupted. And this is how they solved it. On a data CD, everything is stored in sectors. For every block of 2,352 bytes, only 2,048 of those bytes are your actual data. The rest, those other 304 bytes, are all dedicated to super robust error correction codes and headers. They're like a little security team making sure every single bit is read perfectly. And that is our missing 146 megabytes. So, mystery solved. But, this just opens up a whole new chapter in the CD story. It's one thing to read data that was pressed in a factory, but how on earth did we get the incredible power to burn our own disks right there on our desks at home, right? Well, that brings us to the good old CD recordable, the CDR. Instead of having physical pits pressed into the disc at a factory, a blank CDR has this layer of organic dye. When you burn a disc, your computer's high-powered laser heats up tiny spots in this dye, and it permanently changes how they reflect light. As far as the reading laser is concerned, these burned spots look and act exactly like factory-pressed pits. Pretty cool. But then, what about rewriting? That's where the pure magic of the CDRW comes in. This thing uses a totally different technology, a special metal alloy. A really hot laser melts the alloy into a non-reflective amorphous state. That's your pit. But here's the genius part. A second laser, at a lower temperature, can heat it just enough to reform its original shiny crystalline structure. It effectively erases the disk, so you can write on it all over again. But this amazing rewritable ability came with a big trade-off: compatibility. CDRs were simple. They worked in just about any player. CDRWs, though, because they used that phase change alloy, the difference in reflectivity between the burned spots and the unburned spots was much smaller. This meant they needed newer, more sensitive players. You probably remember seeing that multi-read logo on them, just to even see the data. And the CD wasn't just about music and simple data files. Oh no. The creators, Sony and Philips, they developed a whole family of standards for it. They're famously known as the Rainbow Books, and they were designed to push the format in all kinds of wild, new directions. And this is just a little glimpse of how ambitious they were. There was the Beige Book for Kodak's photo CD, the Blue Book for those enhanced CDs that would put music videos right alongside the audio tracks. There were even attempts at super high-resolution audio with the SACD and double-density data CDs, although that last one was basically obsolete the moment it was released. And hey, speaking of standards, here's a fun little fact for you. The original official CD standard was only for 74 minutes of audio. The 80-minute disc that we all know and used, that was actually an unofficial hack. Manufacturers just realized that the specifications had enough wiggle room that they could space the spiral track just a little bit tighter together, squeezing on an extra 6 minutes without technically breaking the rules. But here's the thing. There's a really critical flaw in all of this incredible technology. Those organic dyes in CDRs and those special metal alloys in CDRWs, they aren't immortal. They degrade over time. That means many of the very first CDs people burned at home are already starting to fail, becoming completely unreadable as their data layer literally breaks down or peels apart. And that brings us to the most important question of all, one to really think about. If you have precious photos, old documents, or priceless memories stored away on some of these old disks in a shoebox somewhere, is your digital history actually safe?